Jean Denis, welcome back.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah.
Thanks for coming
It's
back on the
always
show.
a pleasure.
Oh,
Yeah.
I loved our first conversation so much that I thought, let's do it again.
About the saucisson, the bread?
The saucisson, yeah. Finally, I've remembered how to say it, the saucisson. And the bread was delicious, yeah. But it was just such a fascinating conversation, and it was, time just flew when we were chatting. And I thought, let's just do it again. I don't even know what we're going to talk about today, but we'll I'm sure we'll find plenty of topics to work our way through, whether that's French cinema or the presidential debate yesterday. How have you been since the last time we spoke?
Wonderful.
Yeah, enjoying life in Lagos.
Yeah. Wonderful.
How could you not enjoy it here? I guess no. Yeah.
Cool. I mean, it's one of this bubble.
Yeah.
Where you are a little bit out of time. Maybe not time, but out of trouble, out of pressure, out of the hectic.
I think the last time we spoke, it was winter.
Yeah.
And I struggled a little bit here in the winter because it was my first, season, if you like. And it was trying to get used to the idea that the weather was okay, but it was a little bit wet and it was so quiet. Well, at least we're I'm living.
Yeah.
And I was trying to make that adjustment, thinking, what's going on? Well, there's nothing happening. It's dead. It's quiet.
Yeah.
And then spring came and now summer and, it's alive again, isn't it? And I think you need 12 months in a place to understand the full season of how, a town, a city, a region moves,
Maybe 2 years, maybe 3 years.
Yeah.
Maybe 4 years. Every time I moved, I mean, at the beginning, I was always like, yeah, it's beautiful, but it's beautiful everywhere. I don't know. And then, I mean, patience. You adjust to people. Adjust to the vacation is one thing. Traveling for real means that you go somewhere, you try to make a life, try to make a living.
Because you've lived all over the place, haven't you?
Not all over the place, but
China,
I moved.
Switzerland,
No,
America?
No. I lived in, I moved maybe 30 times in my life. Yeah.
That's quite a lot.
So in France, in Europe, I mean, in United States, I mean, Central America, in many places. Not in China. No. We had a little business importing tea from China, but when we were living in Switzerland, like great tea, beautiful tea, real tea, not this powder that you put in a little bag and you sell it with a nice label. No, something serious. Like coming from old ancient tea trees.
Wow.
Ancient tea trees. Have you ever heard about that? No?
Tell me all about your tea knowledge.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's during the communist revolution in China, they tried to erase anything which was related to Chinese culture. Among the Chinese culture, I mean, among spirituality, religion, it was becoming like a real communist place. They got rid of the tea culture. And tea, I mean, Chinese have been always like fascinated about longevity. Anything like bees, they can live long. I mean, they can heal you. I mean, teas, Camellia sinensis, which is the scientific name of the tea tree that grows first in China and moved to India because English botanists brought it to India.
Wow.
While India was
I thought it was
a
native
colony.
to India.
No. And that's because of this guy that tea became, I'm talking about the end of the 19th, that tea became like famous in England, and since then to drink the tea.
It's funny, it's the national drink, or it was the national drink in England. Coffee is quickly replacing it, but you think that it was something that the English have done for 1,000 years, but reality is it's only a couple of hundred years old, isn't it, from the time of the Raj in India?
Yeah, but it's funny because they don't drink the tea the way the Chinese they drink the tea.
No.
They drink the tea, they take the bag. I mean, it's more like a ritual to have a break and to drink something, actually, but nothing to do with real tea, right?
Yeah, it's just a skive off work, isn't it?
Well, it's okay, let's make a break.
But I think, one of the crimes that people from India and China look at the English is when they put milk in their tea.
Terrible.
It's like, what's going on here?
Terrible. Yeah, I mean, just check it out on YouTube. You see like wonderful real tea sommelier in China, how they pour the tea, how they infuse the tea, how they brew the tea, how they make the tea, where it comes for what reason they make such a tea in this region, another tea in this region, and the tree. Who takes care of the tree? They call that like garden something. I don't remember now, but the story says that a tea tree could live up to 1,000 years. So the Chinese, but before the Chinese, the Asian, the local population, the people, the people who were living before civilization was even there, they were using the leaf to eat it, to brew it. And then it became like more sophisticated and part of the Chinese culture.
I guess a little bit like coca leaves, the caffeine in the.
It's
in
always
the tea.
related to that.
Yeah.
It's always related to that because if you go back to Latin America, the farmers, the hunters, the first people living in the jungle, when they go for a long day or a few days hunting, they don't have anything for food. We believe because it's the jungle that you got food everywhere. No, that's not true. So you need something in order to keep in shape. Where do you go?
Coca leaves.
Coca leaves.
Yeah. Well,
and then you got everything you need.
The conquistadors, when they were, in Central and South America, doing what they were doing, is that they banned coca leaves for the natives, and then they realized that work productivity collapsed, right? And they were like,
yeah, of course.
Actually, no, let's reintroduce the coca leaves. They put the coca leaves back in and productivity went right up.
Yeah, it's always about using people as much as we can use people
at
the end of the day. I'm not a leftist at all, but it's always about that. Have you ever heard about the story of the cafe break?
No.
That was like an American company long time ago, too. They were like introducing more and more coffee in the habit of people, like in the daily life of people. Like 200 years ago, we didn't drink coffee. But like at the beginning of the century, we were starting drinking coffee. And I was like, okay, but the girls, because, it's all like social engineering. The women were put to work. And that you got your boss behind is like, go for more, do more, go faster. And there was like a negotiation with supervisors saying, let's get a break. Let's get a coffee. And then they realized that when they had a break, 2 breaks actually, one at 10 o'clock and one in the afternoon, they got a shot of coffee. They had the time to talk a little bit and bam, they were getting better at work.
Yeah.
It's always about, making people...
Yeah, more drugs to get them working.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I cut coffee.
Frenchman,
I don't drink any more coffee.
You don't drink wine or coffee?
No.
What the hell's going on? I thought you were a Frenchman.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, wow. Okay, when did you stop the coffee? I don't really drink much coffee. I have maybe 1, 2, 3 cups a day.
3
max.
weeks ago.
Really? And have you noticed the difference?
Yeah.
Yeah. But not as edgy?
More, no. The first 2 days.
Yeah.
And then, but I was not like, 10 coffees a day.
There's 2 schools of thought on coffee. There's the whole Ray Peat thing. Ray Peat was, he passed away a couple of years ago. He was like a brilliant health researcher, and he was, very much engaged in exposing the pharmaceutical scam and, also the industrial food scam. Really, really, really sharp guy, but he extolled the virtues of coffee like no one else. And he said it's like many, many nutrients, essential nutrients that you can find within coffee, and that you could, restore health with coffee. And then you got the flip side of that coin, the other school of thought, which says coffee is a neurotoxin, right? And your body needs lots of fluids to get rid of the actual toxins within coffee, and that it's really bad for you. So I don't know which way to
look at it. You ever heard about the French paradox?
Yeah, the French paradox is the best. You mean whereas you eat all of this saturated fat and you don't get fat?
Yeah, well, they call that in America, they call the French paradox because we're supposed to live longer than the Americans.
Yeah.
But we drink more wine than the Americans.
And more fat.
More fat,
it's saturated
more wine.
Fat, isn't it?
Well, but the idea was not about fat, because Americans are obsessed about fat. No, it was about wine. They got to sell their wine.
Right.
So they said, look at the French. They live longer. That's the French paradox. They're in shape. I don't know if we're in shape, but they're in shape. They drink lots of wine. That's what we call the French paradox. Let's drink wine.
Nice idea. Yeah, I'll go along with the French paradox.
Yeah, okay, cool. Let's drink wine.
What do you actually... want to speak to a Frenchman, especially an enlightened Frenchman such as yourself.
Thank you.
About the French paradox. What do you think is the explanation for that? Because on the one hand, you've got the Western diet, the SAD is it called, I think, or the Western diet, which is causing mass obesity across a lot of the Western countries. But so the traditional diet of the French consists of things that you would class as unhealthy, but yet the French don't seem to have a problem with obesity like other parts of the world. What do you think's going on there?
We were always 20 years, between 10 and 20 years behind the United States.
Okay. So it's going to hit France the same way it hit America, yeah.
It's already. People, they don't sit around the table anymore as they used to. People, they don't cook anymore. My family, they cook, but most of the people, they don't cook. It's not their fault. I'm not pointing the French and saying, you don't cook. It's because the way they work. Because of social media, because of the TV, because of the kids, because of that, because of a little bit of narcissism, because of let's make it easier, because of basically junk food. It's not about wine. Wine is not good as much as we get older to drink too much wine. I decided to not drink any more wine. That's my problem. I'm not saying that people got to stop drinking wine. I'm saying that when you get older, you don't metabolize as much as fast as when you're young. So, of course, when you don't metabolize, naturally, you don't exercise as much as you were when you were young, not even moving the same way. Because you don't have maybe the same level of testosterone. So everything, and maybe you got more interest to do something else because you're not young anymore. And you can try to look young, you can try to act young, but you're not young anymore. I'm not saying yet you're old.
Because drinking is a labor-intensive hobby, isn't it? It takes up a lot of your time, and whether it's the actual drinking or it's the recovering from it.
Of course, of course. So drinking, it's not the real problem. It's drinking too much and eating bad. That's the real problem. Is to feed yourself with that stuff. We already don't. Look at people. Look at black and white picture from the end of the century, and look at people now. Let's talk about. I'm not even talking about kids, because you see more and more big kids, even in France, even in Portugal, everywhere. Why? Because they don't eat well. Because the parents, they don't feed them well. Because I don't have the money. Yeah, some of them, they don't have the money to go to the and what? I was saying, like, go to the market where I sell my bread, right? But if you go to Intermarché and you buy vegetables, they are more expensive at the white market. It doesn't, even at what's the name, the Pingo Doce, the Portuguese supermarket. No, it makes life easier to go to the supermarket. I take the caddy, bam, 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 I put the stuff in it. I got the feeling that, and I buy like little junk, stupid things, food that I stuff my kids with, and that the kids getting like big.
Well, it's that's the way they're able to maintain their control, is through convenience, because they're pushing you to go to work, make more money, pay the bills, go to work, pay the bills. Right. So you have less and less time. Right, for the slower things like shopping properly, cooking properly. So what they do is say, look, you just go to one shop. You just go to the supermarket. All you got to do is fill everything up, and then you can be done with that shop. So they keep making things more convenient. They keep making bad things more convenient, because they know the one thing we can't buy more of is time. Right? And when your time is getting squeezed and squeezed and squeezed, you're always looking for how to save some time, and that's where they fill the gap.
Yeah, it's very well phrased. I'm not blaming people once again. I'm just saying, like you said, they put everything together. People's got to be aware that they don't feed the kids properly. The kids going to be sick. They're going to be sick. They're not going to live long. They're going to be relying on medication, on doctors. Look, you know what I think about doctors, hospital. When you see what happened these last 4 years, we're not going to go into the subject again, but I don't trust these people at all.
I'd only go there if I was dragged there or it was an emergency, That's the only time I'd really go and see them, because, I think
if you break yourself something,
that's what I'm saying, like an emergency. An accident and emergency, they're excellent. But when it comes to like disease, long-term disease, I wouldn't trust them to tell me the time, But I think in America, I think the third biggest cause of death is death by doctor. Right?
Oh, okay. I've
So
never
it's
seen that. All
actually,
right.
yeah, the actual medical negligence is
Okay.
actually one of the leading causes of death in America.
Okay.
If that's in America, you can, be safe to assume that it's pretty close and pretty high in the rest of Western Europe. So I think they're very risky places. I only go in with extreme caution and in emergency, or when I'm visiting a friend, to try and get them out of there.
But do you include the COVID stuff? Because if you include the COVID story, maybe is first now.
Well, they'll keep those numbers suppressed, don't they? They won't release that. Well, yeah, probably. Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking about the jab. I'm not talking about the COVID. I'm talking about the jab.
Yeah. But that's buried, isn't it? It's buried information. It's only talked about beneath the surface. No.
I saw somewhere that Portugal is the #1 country in terms of mortality today.
Motility.
Mortality.
Yeah. Or mortality. Yeah.
Mortality.
Yeah. Really? Wow.
Yeah.
See that.
Yeah. This year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Pretty heavy duty stats, isn't it? And they got away with it, scot free. Speaking of getting away with it, did you told me that you saw the presidential debate yesterday?
No, I didn't. I
was fortunate enough to miss it.
Little part.
So what was that like? That must have been
it was
a comedy.
It was pathetic.
Yeah.
I mean, some parts, they were laughable. Like, you got on one side the Biden, who is like, and you got Trump, who is like, actually, I didn't understand what he says. And the other one is like, and then the rule was like, you cut the microphone. So it was not like we argue. We go into a fight.
Yeah.
It was like the anchor, they were like, okay, stop, thank you.
So they cut Trump
thank you.
or Biden's microphone.
There was no like, I want to go. That makes things a little bit more, fun. But I guess they wanted to protect this poor Biden.
Of course.
Because it's like, it's like, so thank you, Joe. The microphone is done. Otherwise, he's not going to insist because the microphone is done.
It's absolutely incredible, right? It just never fails to blow my mind, right? That America is meant to be the military superpower of the world, the world's policeman, the ones who are imposing democracy and freedom upon everyone else at the end of a barrel of a gun. But yet they have this incredibly incompetent and failing leader I was surprised that he ran the first time. It's like, how the hell are they going to get away with that? But the fact that he's running twice, that he's running again, it kind of implies that he has more power than what is implied. It looks like he's just a puppet, but maybe he's been in the game a very, very long time. He's a very, very corrupt guy. It's like, well, what the hell's going on? Why are they continuing to prop up the American government with Biden?
Yeah, I got the feeling that they are all the mainstream. They are like trying to find a way to switch between the leftist, the Democrats, to the conservative. They try to do it like Trump's going to win. Trump's going to win for sure. And that's probably the reason they didn't find they didn't switch Biden by another guy. They were talking about Hillary Clinton. They were talking about Big Mike. But
Big Mike.
It was a guy on CNN. That's why a guy on CNN. He said, "Well, we were talking about Hillary Clinton." CNN. He was like pro-Trump, and Big Mike laughing like you. Laughing, Big Mike talking about Michelle Obama. Yeah, on CNN. Yeah. And then I was like, maybe it's not like, well, Trump is going to be no, it's just all stage. At this point, it's just ridiculously pathetic. You see a guy who is like pretty upset to be in some sort of debate talking about Trump, and another guy who is totally...
But I don't even understand the point of it, because it's like anyone who's going to vote for Biden has already made that decision. Anyone who's going to vote for Trump has already made that decision. But how big is this middle section that is it really going to make a difference? What's the point in these two imbeciles almost on the world stage? It looks like. Well, what's the point of this? What are they trying to do? And they talk about Trump being is going to win. But I mean, I struggle to figure out how he can beat the system if it doesn't want him to win. You know,
But the system wants him to be to win. That's what I think.
Okay, well, maybe, yeah.
That's what I think now.
Yeah.
They want him to win, not because Trump is the solution.
Of course.
They are just puppets anyway.
Yeah.
They want him to win because they realize that they are like in a big shit.
Yeah.
And they don't know what to do. I mean, it's not even about Israel. I mean, any politicians in America is kind of like
in the pocket
by Israel. So it's not about Israel. It's not about the poor Palestinians. It's about Ukraine, and it's about the big mess, and it's about big money. People running like big companies in America. They're like, what the fuck? I mean, where are we going now? I mean, that's all right. I mean, remember the Budweiser walk and was a Patagonia walk.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't work. I mean, the majority of Americans, they were like, you crazy. I'm not going to drink any more Budweiser. I mean, those guys, they're like, okay, I mean, we're going to calm down maybe with that.
Yeah.
Maybe we're going to switch to Trump. It's going to be a good way to find an excuse saying, okay, we got to stop in Ukraine because that's Trump. But at least, I mean, we get rid of the problem because it doesn't work. I mean.
Good take. Yeah,
it could be like
because they're in big trouble, aren't they? You know, they're currently this regime. You know, they are just building up their enemies through their total and utter incompetence. It seems, you know, what's happening in Ukraine is just causing, you know, China, India, Russia, Iran to become firm allies. North Korea have just been brought into the picture, and now they're building up a head of steam that can actually, you know, impose a challenge to America's hegemony.
Yeah,
it's like,
you got the BRICS. I mean,
running it into the ground, aren't they? They're crazy.
I mean, how many people they tried to kill lately? I mean, the Czech or the what?
Right, Slovenia, was it?
Slovenia Prime Minister. And then, I mean, there was like, I heard there was something with the president of Hungary.
Orban.
Like a few weeks ago, nothing big, but like a few days ago, but something happened. It was like the coup d'etat in Bolivia.
You didn't see that
like
either.
3 days ago. Failed. But the general who was supposed to take over the country, I mean, it was paid by the CIA. So everywhere they go, I mean, it's just like looking like they crumble up, and Bolivia asked to get into the BRIC.
Okay. So was that why they were trying to run a coup there? Yeah.
Or maybe the opposite way around. I don't know. But it looks like.
So it seems like they're heading to a defeat, a major geopolitical strategic defeat in Europe, and you know, like you say, if Trump comes in, he ain't going to continue that in Ukraine. I don't think.
I don't think so.
Yeah, but it's like I was reading as well recently that BlackRock. Have bought up such huge, vast amount of land and resources in Ukraine that they're kind of behind the scenes going, you know, you can't give this up. Get in there. Keep going. Don't relinquish our control over Ukraine because, you know, we've got a lot of money invested in there, and that land is ours now. You know, but they're not getting anywhere. It's just, you know, falling flat on its face and leading them to a massive, massive defeat. You know?
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. So, tell me more about how the tea. Let's go back to the tea.
Oh, the tea. Yeah.
So you were bringing tea in from China.
Yeah.
And what was the tea, and how did that come about?
How we came about like into the tea stuff. Geraldine was studying qigong.
Yeah.
And martial art in China is very much related to tea.
Okay.
Martial art, generally speaking, is about longevity, flexibility, velocity, strong. It's about fighting, or it's about being in shape.
Yeah.
I mean, when you do qigong, it's not you're going to fight with anyone, but you're going to do a certain set of things in order to get the qi circulating. But the Chinese, I mean, we're talking about like thousands of years of culture, studying, research, like acupuncture and all those acupressure. I mean, the tea is related to that. So the first people who were studying about tea, they were just picking you pick the right leaf in order to do the white tea or in order to do any sort of tea, you know.
So was you importing that tea?
Yeah.
Chinese tea.
Yeah.
And how did you find? Because like you said earlier, the communists squashed
Yeah.
the traditional Chinese culture, which I guess is still kind of maintained in Taiwan, because they say Taiwan is like the traditional Chinese government in exile. I know it's
Yeah.
very much backed by the West,
Yeah.
but it seems that all of those old Chinese traditions are kept there in case one day they can return back to Beijing or wherever it is and overthrow the communist regime. Now, what was your take working with the communist regime in China?
We didn't work with the communist regime.
In terms of buying from the communist regime, because everything state owned, isn't
Chinese,
it?
they like to, they're good salespeople.
Yeah.
It's business.
Yeah.
You read this book, I mean, I can't, it's about this English admiral who 20 years ago wrote a book about the first trip, circumnavigation of the Chinese around the world. They were the first one to map the world. The Chinese, before us.
Wow.
They came back to, I sent you the link. I read the book a long time ago. They came back to China and nothing happened because there was like the regime change. I mean, it was like big mess and it cost lots of money. But they had no little boat like we had, like the Portuguese had, and later the English, the French. No, they had huge boats. And they don't have any weapon. They were not going into war. They were not going into, make yourself a Christian instead of being whatever you are in your forest. They were looking for business, actually.
All right.
So they were loaded of all sort of things they were manufacturing in China. We're talking about the 15th century. They went in US, I mean, in America, I mean, we on this piece of land, they were everywhere except in Europe. And they came back after 4 years. The only positive aspect is that they make a map. They made a map of the world, but didn't find any partner to deal with. So it didn't make any money, actually. So the emperor at that time said, "Okay, you shut up. We don't talk about that. If anyone talk about this experience, I mean, it's done." So for centuries, there was no more conversation, no more writing, no more. And it's the Portuguese infant or prince or king at that time, the brother of the one who financed the first expedition, who found in the Middle East a map of the world. And that's how the Portuguese, they were the first among
China.
The European. No, in the Middle East, they found some people. I mean, in the Middle East, going back to 500 years ago, I mean, doing business. I mean, there might be like some interesting people who were already traveling the world, It was just that intersection between Asia and Europe. And that's Portuguese. I mean, they found the map and they said, well, let's do something with that.
Isn't Macau, the island similar to Hong Kong? That's Portuguese, isn't it?
That was Portuguese, yeah.
Yeah. So that was part of the Portuguese but doing trade with China.
They were everywhere, this little country. I mean, you're wondering how they did that. They were everywhere. They were in China. They were in India. They were in Africa, West Coast, East Coast.
The age of discovery.
They were in America, in Brazil.
Yeah. I wonder what was the driving force behind that, that massive age of discovery and innovation, because they seem to lament about, that lost age of discovery here a little bit. Maybe Fado, Fado, the music here. Fado's music, is like being sad about the loss of empire, maybe, maybe. But with China, I think that's an interesting point, is that they're more interested in trade than they are interested in war. They don't really have a history. In fact, they don't have a history of any kind of imperial ambitions. They don't go to other countries to, dictate war, really. I mean, there's been a few with their neighbors, but generally speaking, it's all within their own borders. So they don't have any history or ambition of imperial war like some in the West do. But what they do differently, for instance, is they go into Africa and they go, okay, you need roads, we'll pay for the roads. You need new infrastructure, okay, we'll pay for the infrastructure, which puts them in a favorable position when it comes to doing the trade with the natives in Africa, for instance. So they're doing it through business. They're gaining control over large areas of land without using the barrel of a gun. They're just doing it through trade and investing all of the money that we've, divested from the industrial base in the West into, building up China's industrial base.
Is it better? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But what
Is which better?
Well, I mean, they don't make war as we make war.
Well, that's the Tao Te Ching is to make war without fighting, isn't it? That's win without fighting, which is kind of what they're doing. So they're not actually engaged in any physical struggle. They're just doing it through being smart in trade. Now, this is kind of where I think there is an element of partnership between the Russians and the Chinese. Is that the Russians are going to be the muscle, in the BRICS, whereas the Chinese are doing the trade. And what do you make of that whole relationship that's happening there between?
Well, I mean, they got the resource, the Russian. They got the biggest piece of land on earth.
And right now, they're the most experienced military operation because of what's happening in Ukraine.
I listened up this guy the other day who was saying that they are 20 years in advance compared to the Americans in terms of weaponry.
Yeah.
And 30 years in front of the Europeans. I mean, except England and France, there is no really any army, serious nuclear power in Europe. But yes, they are such in advance. So, and you know what? I mean, you got to know this guy too. I mean, Jean-Pierre Petit, that's a scientist who invented he was working for the CNRS, which is the big state scientific organization in France. And he worked for them like in the 60s. And he created this, he was able to create a flying object who was able to get rid of any material in front of you, like no air. Because you can get like something who goes like super, super fast.
You mean a hypersonic missile?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a French guy. And when he presented that to the army, to the government, they said, well, I mean, what the fuck are you talking about? I said, okay. He published the Russian. They were like, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, we're going to do that. I mean, that's this arrogance.
Total arrogance.
We are very arrogant. In Europe, in America, we're very arrogant. We still believe that
there's one thing being arrogant when you're smart, but it's another thing entirely being arrogant when you're stupid.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what these people are. They're arrogant and incompetent.
Yeah, because before they were arrogant but smart.
Yeah.
They knew how to find the right guys in order to elaborate something.
Yeah.
But now, I mean, they're arrogant and stupid. It's Idiocracy.
It's just the worst combination you could possibly have.
It's Idiocracy, the movie.
Yeah.
You saw the movie.
I think I did ages ago.
Idiocracy, you got to watch this movie.
Yeah.
You got to watch it, and you watch after the debate of yesterday, and you're like, we are in.
But so if we're to, like you said, they're 30 years ahead, and you wonder, how can Russia be? It doesn't even feel like they have any semiconductors or computer chips. I mean, how are they able to do this? And when you find out how, because they're smart, right? Is that after the end of the Second World War, whereas the West divested our industrial base. Right, because we don't need to, have industry anymore. We can get them to do it for us for cheap. Right? We can just do financial services. Yeah. That's all we have to do is just trade money because we're creating the money because of the whole dollar, the whole dollar scam. The world's reserve currency. That's all we need to do. Whereas Russia, they kept at the end of the Second World War, they kept all of their factories that were able to produce arms and weaponry standing idle. Well, not completely idle, but they weren't running them for profit. So they were there when they needed them. So they were able to switch on their surge capacity by just starting up all of the old machines. People who were already working in the factories, they were just ramped it up from maybe 12 hours a week to 24 hours a day. And they're able to produce this high industrial output of artillery and weapons and machinery and all the things they need to defend themselves from this attack that's coming in from NATO. Meanwhile, NATO, who are leading this failed enterprise in Europe, can't produce any weaponry or ammunition in order to continue this
No, they
crazy
got
struggle. But
they
like,
got
what?
travesties. I mean, being general. I mean, they teach the soldiers how to put the varnish on on the toenails.
This will defend you from Russian bullets. Yeah. But it's like at what level, right? Is who is making these decisions, right? Someone must be sitting somewhere in a room going, yeah, we can do this, and this is how we're going to do it. And it's like, what the hell has happened in that they can continue to go so blindly into this, and it's like they're talking about going after China next, and I can't see how they can.
I mean, seriously, I mean, this is. I mean, it's better to laugh sometimes when they spit out their stuff on TV. I mean, going after China. I mean,
but the thing is China, if you look at Chinese history again, doesn't really have a rich history of warfare, right? In terms of fighting international battles. If you look, the British defeated the Chinese, right, in the Opium Wars. And this is a tiny island, a few thousand miles away. Sent the British Navy over in a few boats, and were able to defeat the Chinese at Shanghai,
Well,
and impose the Opium Wars upon them. So I don't know whether they.
You know how the British defeated the Chinese. I mean, the Opium War.
Yeah. Yeah, they flooded it with heroin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the Chinese, they were not prepared with that.
But it was this
they were
tiny island.
Apart. They were already cramming apart.
Yeah.
It was already going down.
So but I think that this is part of the collective memory.
Don't take it like.
No.
I know that you're British. I mean,
I'm English, not British.
English. I know. I don't want to get into trouble with you. I know that you're English.
No. I know all about the Opium Wars. It was a terrible stain.
No, but yeah, I agree with you. I mean, sometimes you wonder how little islands like England was able to conquer the world, or Portugal was
France.
able.
France.
Yeah, France. I mean, we were not that much. I mean, we had few colonies here and there, but nothing to compare with the English.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, we speak English around the world. Mm-hmm. And if you talk about Portugal, it's a tiny little place, 10 million inhabitants. Maybe 400-500 years ago, there was like what? I mean, maybe 5 million is
only 10 million now, isn't it?
Only 10 million now. You wonder how they were able to maintain Angola, Mozambique, Brazil. I mean, how they were able to maintain those places.
Mm.
Of course, they were probably pretty brutal.
Yeah, but I mean, native people can be brutal too, can't they? It's got to be something a little bit more than brutality, because brutality is probably innate in the human.
You have to ignite it.
You have to ignite it, yeah.
You have to ignite it, and I think that we're very good at that in Europe. We're very bad.
Yeah.
I mean, we can be very, very bad people. There is like the good side and the bad side. Mm-hmm. And the bad side that we are like bloody liars. I mean, that's how we win war. I mean, you wonder how the British, they beat up the Chinese because they lie.
Yeah.
They just fucking lie. I mean, they did their business with opium, and the Chinese, they were stupid enough to believe it. They were already going down, but they took advantage of that. They took advantage of India, who was already like... They were smart in a way. I'm not saying that they were stupid. They were smart, but they lie. They lie. It was just about lying. It's still today about lying more than ever. They lie all the time. You can't believe them. You can't believe them about anything. Anything they spit out on TV is lie.
100%.
I mean, look at the French election now. I mean, they stigmatize the what they call the extreme right. To me, I mean, I'm not part of these people. I don't want to vote for any of what they call the extreme right or the extreme left, because they're all a bunch of liars. But it's not extreme right. It's not even nationalist. It's a sort of, they're just a bunch of carpets on the right side.
Le Pen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're just a bunch of carpets. And Macron and the left, they're saying, look, I'll tell you something. When I was working at the market 2 days ago, I had a bunch of French, retired people. Are you gonna vote? Oh, yes, I'm going to vote. I said, you're going to vote? And for who you're going to vote? Oh, well, I mean, usually I don't vote, but I got to vote because I don't want we got the extreme right in power.
But
I
isn't
was
that
like,
how?
bloody hell, how many injections do you get? They fuck you up already 3 years ago, and then, I mean, you go back to the same thing. They lie to you and you don't realize it. I mean, I'm not one of really the lawyer.
But I think they maybe know the system that does the lies knows that the human's collective memory is very short. You know, and they forget they were lied to yesterday and the day before and the day before that. And
Short and emotion.
Yeah, short and emotion. But it's like, you know, this idea of not Macron. Marine Le Pen. Is she not just a stalking horse that they wheel out in order to go, oh, we can't vote for the far right. So they all vote for the party that, you know, they want them to vote for, that normally they wouldn't go anywhere near because, you know, why would you continue to vote in Macron? You know?
That's all it is. I mean, that's all it is from the beginning. They've been financed by the CIA too. Le Pen.
Le Pen.
Yeah, 40 years ago.
Wow.
I mean, Le Pen, the dad, Jean-Marie Le Pen, who is a smart guy, by the way. Lots of culture. The guy is very interesting to listen up. I mean, especially when he was in shape. He's 96 years old. I mean, he still has in mind, so no problem about it. But, I mean, he became famous from one day to another because he was financed. And then, I mean, getting like famous in France, we could do something with that. And Mitterrand used them like perfectly. And they do exactly the same today. And I see French people, they're all brainwashed. I mean, the one who are like, I'm going to vote for Le Pen. Now it's the time. It's going to put back the country together. I'm like, this is bullshit. And you got the other side say, never vote for this guy. But they're both wrong, totally wrong, because Le Pen, if ever there was a prime minister tomorrow, it wouldn't be worse than it is today.
So the election in France at the moment is not the presidential election; it's the parliamentary election, is it?
Parliamentary.
What's
one round, 2 rounds.
What's the deal with that? Is that to vote in a new prime minister? I mean, how does that work in France? Because the president has quite a lot of executive power, doesn't he, over Parliament? So it's not. Whereas in England, it's, you know, the other way around. The prime minister has the executive power, as it were.
So the French, the Macron party lost the election.
Which is a new party, isn't it? He invented this party.
They invented Renaissance, which is reborn. They invented this party like 7 years ago. And they lost. They never won any election except the presidential since the beginning. And they lost the European one. But it was not like something new. They already lost the last election, European election. They already kind of lost the last parliamentary. They lost everything. But then, I mean, Macron, all of a sudden, some people say that he's a puppet. So, I mean, he was prepared to do that, to say, okay, we're going to make another election. He was not supposed to. He didn't have to do it. But he said, out of the blue, said, okay, we're going to go we stop the government, we go for a re-election in the parliamentary.
I believe that was quite
at the end of the
controversial thing to do, wasn't it? Whereas the parliament, who were already sitting, were like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this?
Yes, of course. I mean, they make so much money. I mean, you take my job out now. I mean, you kick me out and they will never elect me again.
The gravy train is over.
Done. My career is done.
Why do you think he's done that? Why do you think that? What was the reason?
I don't know. Some people say that he's just fucked up.
Does the president in France have an unlimited term as long as he keeps getting voted in, or once he's reached a certain amount of time in office, he's got to leave?
After that, So, but some people, they said whether he or Le Pen has the majority, enough majority to have one other guy being prime minister. And form a government. Whether it's a relative majority to share with the extreme left. They don't call themselves extreme left, but they're extreme left. And in the middle, you have everything that they call themselves Democrat, Renaissance, whatever, Macron guys. But in the middle is going to crumble apart. Now, the question is what the extreme right, what they call the extreme right, going to get the total majority or relative majority, but they're not going to last. If they have the total, they got a prime minister. If they got a little majority, then it won't be unmanageable. So Macron could be tempted to say, okay, we're going to use the Article 16, which gives me total power. like a dictator.
Okay, so that could be the move that is
That could be
behind
the
it,
move.
right? And would that allow him to stay in office past his term?
I don't know about
do
that.
whatever
But
you-
I
do
don't
whatever
know.
you
But
want
he's a
once you've got it.
dictator. I mean, you can invent a story.
So what's Article 16 then?
It gives you all the power in order to not have to refer to the parliamentary about any decision.
Well,
but I don't think it won't work. It won't never work. You know why? Because the Americans, they don't want to keep going in Ukraine.
Yeah.
And the European now, they Macron is it's
Well, do you
irrational.
think-
so
but do you
he
think
wants to
it's-
go
But do you
to.
think this is triggered by, because, Macron was, very outspoken and, received a lot of criticism for coming out and saying, I'm going to put French troops in Ukraine, which everyone, whoa, what the hell is this? Trying to trigger, this NATO article in order for, the rest of the West to come in and put troops on the ground. And he was criticized for this quite forcefully. Do you think this is part of, a strategic plan in order for him to, realize that crazy ambition?
Well, we know in 10 years.
Okay.
When they got
Get you back
some
on.
serious writer, I mean, they're studying the whole question. I mean, it's irrational. It's irrational. I mean, any serious general, I mean, who are not into the narrative, when they're interviewed, they say that we don't have more than 3 days ammunition. And we have 50,000 guys able to be sent in Ukraine. 50,000. For the Olympics, they brought a bunch of guys from all over Europe in Paris, 16,000. So we are not even able to maintain our own country today, if there was anything. And this guy is saying, so does he say that in order to keep people into a state of anxiety, perpetual anxiety? I mean, yesterday there was the COVID, we were in war against the virus. Today there is a war against Putin.
Oh, it's a really good point. Yeah, strategy of tension, they call it. That's
but
an actual term for it.
But where do we go? I mean, because then after you're going to invent what?
Because there's something similar happening in UK. I don't follow UK politics anywhere near as much as I used to, but it still filters into my, my consciousness.
Yeah.
And that's, Rishi Sunak has been criticised as well for calling a snap election.
Yeah.
Because everyone knows that the Tories are going to be wiped out. They're going to be absolutely squashed, right? And Labour are going to have a enormous majority, the type of majority that would keep them in government for 10 years or more, allowing them to do whatever the hell they want.
Yeah.
Right. But they said it was a decision made by Sunak not to defend against the attack from Labour, but it was to defend against any of the smaller parties who are representative of the people from gathering any head of steam. So the Uniparty was working together. The Tories and the Labour Party were working together, saying, okay, it's your turn now. Quick, call the election now, so that our real competition, our real opposition, the smaller parties don't have a chance to get a foothold.
Yeah.
So it seems like the Western Uniparty, whether it's in France, it's in UK, or it's in America currently, is all making a big move for some big event that they're planning, which will probably fall flat on its face because it's run by.
But there was this
idiots.
whistleblower, English, who said that they're planning a big event, maybe during the Olympics.
Who said this?
An English whistleblower.
Right.
Like a false flag bombing somewhere in Europe in order to go full gear into Russia.
I wouldn't put it past them.
But I mean, we are not able to go full gear into Russia. I mean,
unless they know something we don't know, right? It's like they're very good at press ganging. You know, press ganging. Right?
Yeah.
It's an expression where they were the military, the Navy would just go into towns and gather up the men and just put them on the boat. Right? And that's it. They'd be in the Navy then. They just gather them up. It's what they're doing in Ukraine at the moment, is press ganging.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, press ganging. Yeah.
So right now we don't have the numbers, but press gang, 500,000.
But you know what said your prime minister? He said that any young guy who doesn't want to go to the army, won't have a bank account, and won't be able to get his driver license.
That's press ganging in
That's
its own way.
press ganging, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, he was like, trying to win an election, saying, "I'm going to bring back national service." Like, what? Who's going to vote for that? If you're young, if you're under 25, are you going to vote for a party that says they're going to send you to Ukraine and become mincemeat in front of Russian artillery? I mean, it's like, what? These people are mad.
Yeah.
But, there is no depths that these guys won't plumb, right, in order to execute the crazy megalomaniacal ideas. But I know what I think's good is since Second World War, we've been under this financial tyranny, right? This fake financial tyranny, which, the fiat economy, which was the US dollar as the reserve currency of the world, which allowed America to, grow fat and arrogant on the obscene amounts of debt that they could create, because they could force that debt on the rest of the world because they needed dollars in order to buy oil. Right. And that was the way that they were able to run the show, is through the imposition of this post-war financial tyranny. And that's what's being challenged. That's what's being challenged is now the Russians and the Chinese are no longer buying oil with dollars. They're now using yuan or even rubles, right? Which is money that's not going into the Federal Reserve's coffers. So I think that system, that oppressive system, is maybe, coming to an end. And this is why they are so desperate and why they look so stupid, because if they lose control of this gigantic Ponzi scheme, you ever heard of a Ponzi scheme?
Yeah.
If they lose control of this gigantic Ponzi scheme, everything's going to collapse, under its own weight.
That's maybe another reason why they want Trump in control. Well, in control. In the White House, because when everything collapses, they will say, "That's you."
but the thing
that's
is,
why they want the Front National. The Rassemblement National as Prime Minister, because when everything collapses, that's you.
Yeah, good point. But the thing is that for as much of a comedy figure that Trump kind of is, they've done everything they can, as far as I can see, to utterly destroy this man. Right? They've found him guilty, the first president in American history. Right? It's unprecedented. Right? Is that they found an American president guilty of charges that nobody understands in a court that was clearly rigged, a judge that was completely biased, a jury that was selected from the most left-wing area that they could possibly find. So it was a foregone conclusion that he'd be found guilty of this show trial, which is basically all it was a show trial. And so it kind of makes me think, well, they're going to a lot of effort here to try and destroy this guy, but he seems like the Teflon Don. Right? Everything just falls off his shoulders, doesn't it? And he looks like he's in a really good position to challenge Biden in an election, despite him being found guilty of charges. So part of me thinks, definitely part of me thinks this guy is just another shill. He's definitely in the pocket of Israel. That's kind of what my thinking is. But at the same time, I'm also going, well, why are these organs of state power, right? This deep state, permanent bureaucracy, why are they pursuing him? Why are they persecuting him with such determination? I mean, what? Because that's a contradiction for me, right? Whenever there's a contradiction, it's either a mistake or a lie, right? So I'm trying to figure out what that contradiction means. Is that part of some grand narrative to install Trump as like this victim hero?
I see what you mean. Well, I mean, that's why I think that we will know more.
There's two factions behind the scenes. Maybe there's two factions of power. Right, the one faction wants the Trump wing in, one faction wants to keep the status quo and keeps the crazy Biden administration operating. But we're going to find out in November. I'm going to look forward to that. I'm going to watch that election with popcorn.
What was
popcorn and wine? How about that for a mix? What would you match popcorn with?
Coke,
sprinkled on the popcorn.
Did you? What was your thought about Julian Assange?
Really unusual. Just came from nowhere, as far as I can read. But you wonder why they've done it.
Yeah.
Because it was the Democrats who were pursuing him, allegedly, with the vigor that they have. It was Hillary Clinton in particular was the main driving force about keeping him incarcerated, because she had like a demonic obsession with destroying Julian Assange, or so it appears. And then somehow he has negotiated his freedom for a plea deal, which is nothing, right? Well, then again, he's pleaded guilty to something he's not guilty of.
Yeah.
But I don't get the political reasoning behind that. I mean, what's in it for them? I don't understand why they do it. There's something going on, isn't there? There's something going on behind the scenes, because Trump didn't pardon him. And he could have pardoned him very easily, and he would have won a lot of points, and he probably would have converted a few voters who were maybe, wavering on the left, that maybe thought, okay, well, this guy deserves another chance here, because he's freed these journalists. But he didn't do it. He just totally ignored him, didn't he?
Yeah.
Despite the criticism he faced for it. But yet Biden, Biden is the one that has released him from his incarceration. I don't know. What's your take on it?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, it's going to be interesting whether that experience in hell that Assange has been through, which he's been in Belmarsh for the last 5 years.
5 years, yeah.
Belmarsh is a high security Victorian prison. It's as harsh as it gets. It's like a fucking dungeon. You know what I mean?
2 by 3. I mean, it's big like this.
But he was in with like terrorists and murderers.
Yeah.
Some of the most hardcore criminals in Britain go to Belmarsh, and to send a journalist right to Belmarsh for having committed no crime.
No.
Having committed no crime, had been haven't been found guilty of any crime.
Yeah.
But yet they put him in one of the most high security prisons in the UK. A form of torture, isn't it?
Well, I mean, when you fight against those guys, I mean, we're dealing with criminals, huh?
Mass criminals, the worst, the absolute worst type. The ones that are in jail are nowhere near as bad as the ones that are, running the American hegemony, and the British as well. They're in with them, because it was the British government that kept them in jail on behalf of the Americans, despite it going against all of the British customs and traditions for extradition. Is that the Americans didn't have a persuasive case for extradition. It was, it failed on many of the tests that the British government use in order to determine whether someone should be extradited for crimes. And it failed on pretty much all of them.
Yeah.
And maybe that is why, because Assange's case wasn't heard by any specific qualified judges, like real high court judges, until recently. So maybe the British government have said, look, we can't extradite him. It goes against, we wouldn't be, shown to do any kind of adherence to British law.
Yeah.
Come up with some deal in the background and, get it done yourselves. Maybe that was going on, but the timing is definitely unusual.
Yeah.
So do you think that there's another side to that story? In terms of some people have said, he was part of the system himself, Assange. It's going a little bit too far in it for me.
If you scroll X now, I mean, you see trans everywhere. I mean, they're like, look at this one is a trans. This one is a trans. I mean, no, it's
trans,
a travesty, a transgender.
Yeah. I know
it goes too far.
They go crazy, don't they?
There's some people they're playing with that, I guess. I mean, some people were saying that Assange. Yes, I've read that.
Yeah, no, because it's like
he doesn't look like the same. Well, I mean, spent 5 years in a 2 by 3.
Oh, you mean the clones? You mean the people saying everyone's a clone?
Yeah.
No, I know. Sometimes I'll go on to Facebook and I'll see some of the people who are that they're kind of they're very committed to this idea of this but even this idea of clones, right? You ever looked at that?
And the mask also.
Yeah, it's too much. It's just too much, man, right? But even the clones, I go, okay, then. So where did they grow the clone? How did they grow the clone? Because if it's a clone, when was it created? What, have they got some kind of rapid growth that they can grow a clone? I mean, what's the science behind the clone? No one ever really talks about that, you know.
Well, those guys, they're meant to create even more
disinfo. That's classic disinfo, though. You know,
among the people who are not into the narrative. Okay, we're gonna create the mess. I mean, the one who are naive enough to, why not? I mean, the clone and the big grey and the small grey, and
but to make dissidents,
and the Anunnaki.
But it's to put dissidents into a certain group, isn't it? So that dissidents who may have some objective criticism about, you know, state power, they get lumped into this, you know, this container full of people who are talking about clones.
When you're a liar, I mean, when your main weapon is to lie, you can afford anything.
Yeah,
there is enough naive people, credule people, to make them believe anything you want.
Well, Mossad's,
when you're a good liar,
Mossad's motto is "Make war by deception."
That's
their motto.
Yes, it is. It is. I mean, look at what we are a negligible quantity for these people, and they are in control. They are in control. With the Masonic, they are in control. They hold everyone. I mean, Epstein was one of their important dudes.
Very important.
Yeah, you put someone in the bed with someone else, and you film it, and then, I mean, sorry, dude.
But that's a classic. You know, when people can't quite wrap their heads around, well, how are they able to run a global network of state assets? Like, how are they able to get, you know, the president of France, the prime minister of England, the presidents of America to all agree on everything at the same time and go in the same direction all the time, along with the media and everybody else? You think, well, how could they possibly do that? It's a little bit too much, isn't it? But then when you look at how Epstein run his operation, it was the honey trap. It's like when people are selected for power and they're filtered by the vulnerabilities for vices, right? So whatever their vices are, the people who are running the political parties know this. The chief whip, they're called in England. There's a member of parliament in each party called a chief whip, and his job is to whip the MPs to vote the way the government wants them to vote. Right. So if the government wants the rest of the backbenchers to go a certain direction, is the chief whip will go around and make sure that everyone votes in favour of the government. And what his job is to keep a dossier on all of the MPs, to know what their vices are, to know what their weaknesses are, to know whether they're blackmailed, threatened or bribed, in order for them to vote in favour of the government. So they select people by their vices, and the ones with the most vices go to the top because they're the ones that are most easy to control. And with the Epstein, you know, scandal, that exposed this high level, you know, corruption of massive, powerful players, including Bill Clinton.
Yeah, and
in order for them to do what they want them to do.
Yeah. And you put on the so you got the Epstein who is looking after people. I mean, what they do in their bed, or organize like little party with kids. And you got on the other side, I mean, the WHO. Who is like training young dude like 20 years ago. You catch up like a couple of fucked up people like Macron. You bring them to the young leaders, and they're all friends. They all slept with each other. I don't know what they do together, but it must be very, very stinky. And they did that for 20 years. And then, I mean, they reached the age of 40, and then that's the time to get into the position. So if you look at like this last 50 years, I mean, if you go back to the end of World War II, actually it was not the aim of the United States to conquer Europe. I mean, we are just in Europe a vassal. We submitted to United States. The job was well done. There was a little bit of resistance here and there, but it was pretty well done. And they never stopped to screw us. I mean, you got United States who officially won the war, even if there was no one, if there was not the Russian on the other side. But they officially won the war. They bombed, I mean, the poor Germany, who actually was into war and created this crazy Hitler because of the Versailles Treaty. So, I mean, when you look at, you take a little bit of perspective, you're like, well, it makes sense. That was pretty smart.
Definitely.
That was really organized. Now, I mean, it's getting like too crazy because They were maybe assholes 50 years ago, but they were smart. They had a vision.
Yeah.
You know, the Americans, the French, the English, they were traitors, the French, because they worked for the Americans. But I can understand that. You're a 20 years old guy, you go to study in America, instead of going into a Parisian kind of university, I mean, you go in California and, you know, that's cool. You come back to France after you're in love with America. We've been living there. When we come back from the United States, if we put apart the bad parts, I mean, the good part is just like very exciting. So we can imagine that if you are a young prospect, will become maybe prime minister or something like that in the next 20 years. You spend already 10 years in America. You speak perfectly English. You've been introduced to everywhere you can be. And 20 years after, when you're going to be in position, so remember, we took care of you when you were in America with us. You loved our country.
Payback.
Yes, of course, I love it. Okay, all right, I do it.
Yeah.
Then you find a good reason to betray your country.
I think again it goes back to this, you know, post-war financial reconfiguration that because they, you know, won so decisively in Europe, supposedly, they were able to, you know, really push home this idea of fake money that they can print at will. Yeah. So imagine if you're running the system and you want everyone to do what you want them to do. Money is a very, very good incentive for those type of people. And if you've got a bottomless pit of fake money that you can magic out of the air, enormous amounts, you know, unfathomable amounts of money that you can do at will because you have your finger on the printing press that just creates this paper. You know, that's one of the main tools that they've used in order to buy everybody, you know, in positions of power, to betray their own people because they've found their price.
Talking about money, what do you think about Bukele?
But which?
Bukele, the president of Salvador.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I haven't really watched anything with him other than what pops up in the news. I know he's big on Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And he cleaned up Salvador recently, hasn't he? He's got all the mafia off the street, put them in prison. But Tucker Carlson did an interview with him recently. I didn't watch it. Did you see it yourself?
No. But I've followed, I mean, Bukele a little bit.
What do you think? Does he seem genuine?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great what he did.
Yeah.
I think it's great. I mean, I wonder how this guy is still alive.
Well, you've got the other guy as well, haven't you? Milieu in Argentina, who's also come out against, I don't know how enough about him to make a decision, but he's come out and said, look, I'm going to get rid of the central bank. I don't know whether that's true or whether he has. That's the last time I tuned in. But you have him, you have Bukele. Is there some kind of like a revolution going on in South America to kick out the, you know, the American financial empire that keeps them suppressed?
Well, Milei, I don't know.
No.
I don't know. I mean, I heard like bad things going on in Argentina.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because Argentina, I think before the war was regarded as like the Switzerland of South America. Yeah. Really opulent, really good economy. And they say, don't they? They say Argentinians are Italians who speak Spanish that want to be English. Yeah. But so the Bukele guy, what do you think of him?
Well, I mean, he cleaned up the country. It was one of the most dangerous place in America. Small place. So he really cleaned up the country. He was able to change the constitution because before him, you couldn't be elected more than once. So everybody followed him behind, said, okay, you're going to be elected a second time. And then he created in the prison, I mean, it's not only being in prison, it's also to work in prison, to have projects. So they created a whole system to make people working, no telephone, no TV, and just working, doing stuff. You're a butcher? Okay, you're going to work in the kitchen. You're a carpenter? Okay, you're nothing, you're going to teach you a job. But prison, still in prison. And then the Bitcoin, I mean, even if people in daily life, they don't use the Bitcoin, but I mean, everybody was laughing, saying, well, I mean, look, I mean, it's going down. But if you take a little bit of perspective, it never stopped going up anyway. So they make money.
That's interesting.
And he was giving a lecture in the United States and he was explaining, that's why sometimes I wonder, I mean, this guy, I mean, how he can talk so freely. He was giving a lecture in the United States explaining why people got screwed paying tax. He said, if you are able to get your finger on the button to create money as you want, why you make people to pay tax?
Of course.
You don't need to. To give them the feeling that there is not enough money and to enslave them. So developing this idea, I was like, wow, that's pretty interesting. Where he spoke in America.
That is the central point of the debt-based financial system, is to create an artificial scarcity of resources being money. And liquidity is the lifeblood of innovation and productivity. But the financial elite say, well, this is scarce. It's not, it's abundant, but they make it scarce. And when we think something is scarce and we have to compete for resources that we probably shouldn't have to compete for, it brings out the worst in us sometimes, because, if I want it, I'm going to get it. And like sometimes we'll do things that we shouldn't do in order to get the thing we need. So they're able to bring out the worst in humanity through creating this artificial scarcity, which the debt-based, interest-based currency, has the effect upon that. But it's interesting that he said he wants to increase his term. Normally that's regarded as, something bad, but it depends if the guy is interested in representing his people rather than the other interests. Is it my mistake, but I'm sure I saw a video of him, and he's sitting in his, he's in like a big room with all of the government, right? And he's sitting there and he says, I want to make an announcement. And there's the head of the Justice Department is sitting there, and he says, I want to make this announcement. I want you to investigate me, right? He said, I want you to investigate me for corruption, right, to make sure that I can represent the people openly and honestly. And he said, and then he said, and I want everyone else to be under investigation too, all of the other governments. And this was a surprise, because the face on the rest of the people in his parliament, they dropped, right? Because he's just done this live on TV. He's announced that all of them are going to be under investigation by the Justice Minister, which I thought was such a balls out move,
Maybe it's going to become the little Switzerland of America.
Yeah.
No, so I mean,
but like you say, if it becomes too much of an oasis, if it becomes too much of a place where people are flocking to, is the CIA won't be like that, and they may have to clip his wings. Yeah. I read a book called The Economic Hitman, The Diaries of an Economic Hitman. It's really, really interesting book. This guy, it's an old book now, it's been around for a while, but he used to work for basically the CIA, but he worked for front companies in the CIA, like business consulting. Right? They go into third world countries and say, we will build your infrastructure. Do you need roads? No problem. You need a power station? No problem. Right? We'll give you the money. And he'd go in from the CIA, bankroll these governments, and then have them on a high interest rate. So the governments would go, we need a power station, we need fresh water, and have them on a high interest rate, and they would just use the dodgy financial sector to increase the interest rates, so the governments would default on the loan. Right, and the moment the government would default on the loan, they say, okay, so you can't pay the loan, hey, so we want that public service there. We want your electricity. We want your, and they'd have to roll over. And this is how they would go in. They were called the economic hitmen. They would go into countries, do these loans, give these loans, and use their national resources as the security for these fake loans, which is what we see.
That's might be happening tomorrow to France.
It's happening when we get a mortgage. It's the same scam.
Yeah.
It's the same scam when we get a mortgage.
Yeah.
We give over real property, which is bricks and mortar, and they give us paper money that's from a monopoly game. Right? And when they increase the rates against us, as they go, oh, can't pay, we'll have the bricks and mortar. Thank you very much. It's such a scam. But you're saying that was happening in France?
But, and I mean, if we bankrupt,
like
3,000 billion debt.
Which can never be paid.
If you're bankrupt,
Yeah.
what's going to be the FME? They're going to have to loan money to France. High interest. They won't be able to pay. We don't even have industry. They're saying that we have lots of industry. No, they sold the strategic one to America, to United States. I mean, I'm very pessimistic about what's going to happen.
Well,
In many countries in France, I mean,
I think
in
a collapse,
Europe, I mean,
a financial collapse could actually be a silver lining.
yeah, but it takes like maybe 50 or, I mean, how long did it take for Russia? I mean, they weren't fast. I mean, I was listening to some Russian people saying that they moved to Russia after the collapse, when Putin got into the game. It was like the third world country. It's just like big party for a guy, 30 years old, going into Russia in the 90s. It was like, you can imagine, and let you imagine how big party was.
Yeah.
Everything cheap, beautiful women everywhere, big party. Well, look where they are today. You go there, it's not cheap.
Well, Moscow is one of the most expensive places on earth, isn't it?
Yeah. The beautiful women, they don't look at you anymore.
They're not cheap anymore.
They look at you as a third world guy.
You need more than a few rubles now, don't you?
Well, so they took like 30 years to put back the country in...
Which is actually only a short amount of time, really, isn't it? In the grand scheme of things, they were under the oppressive, brutal yoke of communism in Russia for 70, 75 years.
Yeah.
And it's took them 30 years to become... They now just announced that they were the fourth biggest economy now.
Yeah. I think that America could go fast too, because they still have the spirit of patriotism in America.
Yeah.
Not in France.
No.
Not in UK, I don't know.
No.
In Germany, certainly
but
not.
What about in like the heartlands of France? Is this idea of French unity there? I mean, French patriotism, is it like in the countryside, in the heartlands, rather than the big cities? Because the big cities seem to be like total leftist failures, don't they?
Yeah, but 80% of the people that live in city.
Yeah. Yeah, but they don't produce any food there, do they?
Well, they manage to produce less and less. Anyway, food.
So why do you think? Because England is not only is the lack of patriotism, tangible, but it's condemned. You get ostracized if you have any patriotism other than for football. Right, that's the only space that they're allowed to express any type of idea of country. Any other type of expression of patriotism in England is just condemned as racist and all that nonsense that they use to suppress people's identity.
Which was not the case at the end of USSR. I mean, that was like pretty easy actually to go from a communist place that was lied for 80 years to a non-communist place, and to just get into the population again this proudness of being Russian. It was pretty quick. And I guess that in America it would be pretty quick too, because there is a majority of patriots.
But they're not in the city. They're all like in the heartlands, aren't they, of America? The cities are like lost to the Democrats.
Yeah, but the country is spread.
Yeah.
There are lots of patriot people work. They do the business. I mean, there is more patriot in America than there is in France. But you got a conversation with an American, even with a woke guy, and he criticizes the country. I mean, at a certain point, he's going to go into an argument. He's not going to appreciate you go too far into the criticism. And it's good. You can feel that there is this still patriotism in this woke guy. I'm not even talking about the real patriot of America, who are a majority, I believe. But if you go to France, 80% people, they live in Paris, Lyon, Marseille. I mean, let's say 15%, they are foreigners. I mean, the retired people, I mean, in 10, 20 years, they will be dead. But for now, they vote Macron.
Are they the ones that are voting for Macron?
Yes, of course they are.
Oh, wow. Yeah, voting away their own future. Yeah, it's crazy, isn't
Yes,
it?
they are. Yes, they are the one. They are the one.
So are the French obviously this is just a generalization, right? France and the French committed to the European project, the EU? Is that something that is where their identity is now tied from a patriotic perspective? Because I know the Germans in a way reject their Germanic identity and accept the EU as the new flag to get behind. Is that similar in France? Or?
No, because the German, they were destroyed after World War II.
Yeah.
And they have to carry on with their guiltness of being the big responsible of the extermination of certain Jews. In France, we didn't have to deal with that. We had to deal with not being too much invaded by the Americans, but the Americans, they practice what we call soft power. They got their movie, they got their chewing gum, they got their jeans, they got their music, they got their style, which is pretty all right. I mean, when you go back to when you were a kid yourself, remember the style of the Americans?
Of course.
Cool and relaxed, cool and sophisticated, the way they speak, the way they act, the way they got dressed. You go in a city or you go in a cowboy movie, it's always like kind of cool, opposite to our strict, more conservative society if we go back 30, 40, 50, 80 years ago. So they were pretty easy to...
Cultural revolution. Yeah. I mean, it's a lot easier to conquer a country with a cultural revolution than at the end of a barrel of a gun, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what
Now, the thing is that they touch kids.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, it could... I don't get that. I mean, I don't get why. I mean, that was not a smart move. They could have kept going their whole scam, their whole hoax, if they didn't touch the kids. But with the kid stuff, there are more and more people starting to wake up. I'm not, well, let's...
Well, maybe like, that's the whole point though, is that deviancy doesn't have any bounds.
Yeah.
And the moment they keep, gaining more territory, because like you said, it's like if they could have just kept themselves out of that, they would have been able to maintain this control over the mind of the culture. But it's like now that we can see the actual true levels of abuse that they want to go, and that's not going to be enough either. That's just one step in this like conquest of deviancy, isn't it?
Well, I mean, it's
the children now, but what's next after that? What's the next step?
It's the first time in the human history that we see an empire destroying his own conquest.
Yeah.
Instead of using us to build, to do stuff. I mean, they did it with Germany. They took the smart guy and they created the atomic bomb, and they created a lot of things. But I mean, now they went so far that they're getting stupid, we're getting stupid, and we're getting poor. Instead of, so Rome, at the end of the day, brought something to goal. Because, I mean, we had little house with, wood house. And then after 200 years invasion, I mean, we had roads.
What did the Romans ever do for us?
Buildings, errands. We got stuff, what the Americans do for us. At least, I mean.
But did Rome fall because of decadence too? Is this the true cycle of an empire? Right?
I think so.
Once they've gorged themselves on all of the resources that are free, then okay, what's the next level of exploitation that we can do over these conquered people? Because imagine being no one wants to be the conquered. Right, that's the worst position you can be in, is the conquered.
Yeah.
Right, the conqueror, is the one who's sitting at the top, isn't he? And he's finding new ways to exploit his conquest.
Yeah.
So imagine being a conqueror that's going in and decimating countries. What kind of perverse kick they must get from doing that?
Yeah.
From going in and mass murdering people, and what I want more. Keep going, keep killing them. I want more land. I want more resources. I want more wealth, more power, more. So what do you give a man who has more money and more power than anyone can imagine? That's when they start going into these weird deviancies, I think.
Well, that's what we did with our colonies, huh?
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, going for about an hour and a half. we've put the world to rights again. I really enjoyed our geopolitical
wonderful.
conversation.
It's always a pleasure, man.
Yeah, great. So if people want to find you and they want to experience your amazing
bread
right.
at the market.
At the market in Lagos on Wednesday. And Saturday?
No, Wednesday.
Oh, just Wednesday now?
Only Wednesday.
I was only ever watched Wednesday?
No, Saturday, never Saturday.
Oh, okay.
Only Wednesday.
I've never been on Saturday. Maybe that's what it is. Yeah. But yeah, so they can sample your amazing bread in the market. You're not selling it online yet, the bread?
No.
No plans?
No.
But also, I know I was kind enough, me and Donnie, my lad, were kind enough to be invited to Theo's birthday recently, which was great. Really, really enjoyed that. But I also sampled your incredible ginger beer.
Yeah,
That was beautiful.
Yeah, that's good, huh?
Yeah, it was really, really good. I didn't know you made and sold that as well as the bread. So if you like ginger beer, definitely go and take.
It's not an alcoholic beverage, huh?
What's it? Ginger ale?
It's it's ginger. No, it's alive.
Yeah,
it's alive. I mean, there is a probiotic. It's a fizzy drink.
If you left that,
it's fermentation stuff.
But if you left it to ferment, would it turn into alcoholic beer?
No. There is not enough sugar to go up to the point there is like substantial amount of alcohol.
Really spicy though. It was really, really good.
Yeah.
So you go and get the bread. Any new bread on the shelves? No. Any new styles?
No.
Okay.
Not now.
No. Any new wheat?
No. Probably ancient. Like hopefully next. In the fall, I will have ancient wheat.
Okay, and this is the one you were sourcing from Germany, is that right, or was it?
From France. Yeah.
From France. Yeah, and this is untouched. No,
non-genetically modified.
Non-genetically modified.
Ancient.
What strain of wheat is it? Just wheat?
Wheat. I mean, if you go back once again, if you go back to the past, I mean, every valley, every region had its own wheat. Yeah. It's wheat, but it's a little bit of difference depending of the weather, I guess, depending of the soil, I guess, makes a little bit of difference. It's like apple. If you go to the market 100 years ago, you had like hundreds of different sorts of apple.
You can't make apples without grafting a tree, can you? You have to graft the tree, apparently. So you have to,
I guess, yeah.
Otherwise, they're crab apples, which are, pretty much inedible. So it's only through the hybridization of apple trees that we're able to produce apples. But that's another story. If people want to find you online, are you online anywhere? Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, any of those things? No,
Facebook to me is the instrument of this Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
Is another. I always step on eye. And Instagram, I have an account, but I barely fit him.
Okay. Oh, I might, if you want me to put the link in the
ancient way, old school.
Yeah.
I make my bread. You want to buy it? Good for you. You don't want? You're still my friend. It's fine too.
Okay. Cool. Jean, thanks so much for coming in. I
My
appreciate
pleasure.
it. Yeah,
All
awesome.
right.
Thanks, bro.
Thank you.